So now I would like to introduce you to the first speaker for today, Dr. O.D. Abuchakra. Dr. O.D. is a founder of Inspired Results, a global performance coaching and training company. He's a chiropractor and an author of personal growth books for children. Today, he will share with you 3 ways to ignite your resilience. If anyone has any questions during his talk, feel free to put it into the box and we'll make sure he gets to them at the end.
All right. Thank you, Nikita. That was breathtaking. And thank you for the introduction as well. So I've been contemplating resilience for a long time. And I wondered, why are some people more resilient than others? And why is it that at times the resilient people sometimes lose their resilience? So I was sitting by the pool with my 5-year-old son, and I basically said to him, Eddie, it's time to go. And he said, Dad, can I stay longer? And I was like, son, we made a deal. I said that when we go to the pool and I say it's time to go, you would agree, because then next time when I want to take you somewhere, I'm going to think twice, because I know it's going to be tough to, take you out of the water. And so, he looked at me with those beautiful, what do I want to say, velvety colored black eyes. And I just couldn't resist. I said, son, you know what? I'm going to make you a deal. I saw the opportunity in this. I said, son, I'm going to make you a deal. Look, if you can swim the width of the pool, shallow end to shallow end, not the deep end. If you can swim the width of the pool, not only are we going to stay longer, we are going to be the last people to leave. I'm going to wait for the lifeguard to kick us out. And his reaction was very reflexive. And what he said was, but Dad, I can't. And I was like, hold on a second, son. I don't know about every family in the world, but the Abuchakras, we don't say, I can't. He's like, okay, Dad, I'll try. I said, son, that's not going to cut it either. So, he didn't really know what to think at this point. I said, Eddie, here's what I want you to think. Look at me. I want you to say, I can, and I will. So he's like, okay, Dad, I can and I will. I said, no, son, just say it with some certainty. He said, I can and I will. It got loud. I kept kind of hyping him up. And then it got a little awkward because we were drawing some attention. And then I said, so now I want you to do it. Oh, I'm going to talk to you about the 3 ways to boost your resilience. And you're going to see that he was able to apply all 3. When he took the first, couple breaths, so he went under, came up, went under, came up. That's usually the limit. And he usually has to stand up at that point. Well, he was able to get the 3rd breath and then the 4th breath. And then he turned to me and I gave him 0 encouragement. I wanted him to be propelled from the inside out. I didn't say, well done, or I didn't clap or give him a thumbs up or smile, nothing, just like poker face. And so he kept going. It probably took about 17 breaths to get to the other side, maybe close to 20. And when he did, he gave me this beautiful big hug and he said, Dad, I love you. And he squeezed me so tight. I then allowed him to spend, as much time as we had before we were asked to leave. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And what I want to do is I want to talk to you about resilience. And many of the things, Nikita, that you were teaching during the meditation was so spot on. And it's almost like we orchestrated this. And there was no dry run of this at all. And what's so cool is I'm going to talk about breath. I'm also going to use a skyscraper example as well. But I want to start with just a quick definition of resilience. You all know what it means in your own way. But resilience is basically overcoming difficulty or challenge. It's this elasticity or this give, I think you called it, this ability to bounce back and to get your train on the track again. So I want you just to consider right now what your number 1 challenge is during this whole COVID period. Is it business? Is it relationships? Is it your finance? Is it your health? Just consider maybe your number 1 challenge for the moment. And I want to just talk to you about the fact that you all can appreciate that stress isn't going anywhere. But there's really 2 kinds of stress. And when we say the word stress, we're usually talking about the negative one. But there is something called Eustress, Eustress. That's the work of Nobel Prize laureate Heinz Selle. And Eustress is basically the stress that you welcome into your life, right? It's usually stress that you choose. It's stress that you bring into your life for your own reasons, whether it's running a marathon or climbing a mountain or starting a business. But this is the positive kind of stress that brings out the best in you. But there's also negative stress, what we call distress. This could be doing something you dislike, or the kind of stress that shows up on your doorstep that you didn't welcome, you didn't invite, kind of like what's going on with COVID. I know that whenever I do events, for me, the most stressful part is all the admin and the planning and organizing that goes into making it a perfect event. What brings me the greatest inspiration, the Eustress part of it, if you will, is presenting and speaking and doing what I love to do. So if we look at, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if we look at distress, it basically taxes you. And it's unlike eustress, where you actually come alive. Distress is that feeling that, I don't really want to be in this, right? It's like not being a mountain climber because you want to, but being chased up a mountain. If you want to think of it like that. But what I want to talk to you about today is about breaking the distress cycle, because you don't need help when it comes to eustress. You don't need help mostly you mostly need help with distress, but you don't really need help with facing the things that you love doing, the challenges you've embraced and you've welcomed into your life by choice. So when we talk about distress, there's a cycle, and that the first thing that happens is you perceive something in your mind to be stressful. It triggers the sympathetic response, and then it changes your physiology, your hormones, your neurotransmitters. It affects the way you breathe. It affects the way you communicate, and then it again affects the way you think, and that creates this vicious cycle. So I want to help you break this distress cycle in 3 ways. The acronym is BMV, or body, mind, and voice, not to be confused with BMW. So body, mind, voice, BMV. We'll start with body. Nikita's already beautifully touched on some of these points, but I want to just let you know that, just consider for a moment before I go into this in detail, just think about what Eddie did. Because as you guys can see, he was tapping into these 3 areas. I'll review them later. But the first is breath. Now, if you look at the way babies, if you guys have children at home, you'll see that they breathe from their abdomen, like Nikita was saying. So when you breathe in, whether it's from your nose or from your mouth or even from your ears, you breathe in from the belly, from the diaphragm. Now, what people typically do when they're stressed out is they take deep breaths. And we know that that's effective. In fact, we know that if I hook up a blood pressure cuff and I take your reading and then I have you take some deep breaths for 30 seconds to a minute or so, you can probably reduce the reading. So it's a beautiful thing for people with blood pressure. But it's not just deep breaths that's the secret. It's also what Nikita was doing beautifully, which is trying to get you to have like a 1-to-1 ratio where your inhalation equals your exhalation. Now, the truth of the matter is, when you take a full breath in, your exhale is usually gonna match it. But there's a beautiful technique that Navy SEALs use called box breathing. And this technique is basically inhaling for a count. And Nikita was trying to push us, right, from 4 seconds to 5 or 6. But so if you were just to pick a random number, let's say 4. So you were to take a deep breath in. So the inhale is 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it's hold, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Box breathing. They do this usually before they go into combat, just to calm themselves. Now, the other thing that's important, and again, Nikita beautifully touched on it, is where the movement should come when you're breathing. Some of you may have noticed that you're breathing into your chest and even your neck, possibly, if the breath is really coming up vertically. But the secret is to breathe diaphragmatically. So if you can do that, take deep breaths, balance the ratio 1-to-1, inhalation to exhalation, and make sure you breathe from your diaphragm. It's literally like a distress breaking and mind hack, if you will, because what it does, here's the deal. If I was to take you and drop you in freezing cold water, your breath would come up here into your neck. You take deep breaths like that. If, God forbid, one of your children came up to you and said, "Mommy, Daddy," you would think, what happened? What's going on? So we know that physical stress, emotional, psychological stress takes the breath away from the diaphragm and brings it into the thoracic area, the chest area, and even up into the neck. So when you're breathing that way, and there's nothing wrong because you're at Carrefour shopping or you're at the mall picking up something, you can create anxiety because what the mind will think, the subconscious mind will say, hey, I'm breathing this way when I should only be breathing this way when I'm stressed. So something must be wrong. But the beauty is, if you can learn to bring the breath down into the diaphragmatic area, into your navel area, so that an inhale brings the navel out and the exhale brings the navel back in towards your spine, what'll happen is, even under stressful circumstances, your mind will say, hey, the subconscious mind will say, hey, everything must be okay. So what was interesting with Eddie is when I was watching him underwater, I was looking at his tummy and he was breathing from his belly. So it would stick out like he was pregnant, then it'd come back in. So that's the first way to ignite your resilience, and that is to go back to the natural breath we were born with, and that'll help you break the distress cycle. Okay, the second, so BMV, body, mind, and voice. So mind, you can interrupt me for questions at any time, by the way. But so for the mind,
sorry, Audrey.
Yes.
I just put a question on the chat. So some of the meditation experts usually say that the exhalation should be longer than the inhalation. So could you just clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So for example, if you're trying to stimulate, so when you're breathing, when your inhale is longer than your exhale, what you're doing is you're in sympathetic mode, which is fight or flight mode. And so that's why they're recommending to exhale longer, so that you stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. You can do that as well. The balanced state, the centered state, is 1-to-1 ratio. That's why when you sleep, your inhale equals your exhale. If you watch, somebody sleeping, unless they're having a nightmare, typically your breath will be, 1-to-1 on a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, if you're trying to get to sleep, this is a beautiful technique, right? And if your stress is, over the top, you could extend your exhalation. Just so you know, what I decided to do today is just give you kind of one essential for body, mind, and voice, although I can go into detail on all three. So what you could do when you're trying to stimulate sleep and the parasympathetic nervous system, what we call the rest and digest system, you can exaggerate or lengthen your exhalation. So fantastic question.
Thank you. Thanks for the answer.
Yep. So again, feel free to interrupt me anytime. So I'll go into the mind now. So with the mind, what's important to understand is that usually we make statements about, what's going on in our lives at the moment. So a lot of these statements are self-limiting. I've heard people say something like, this is impossible. I can't believe this is happening. I'm never going to get through this, whether they're thinking of their business, their relationship, their health, whatever it is that COVID is kind of, shifting out of balance. But these statements can hold you back big time. And if I was to give you one thing when it comes to the mind, the limited time that I have, that would be to replace your statements with questions. Now, you want to be careful not to replace your statements with random questions, such as, why me, why now, now what, or why does this keep happening to me? Every time I gain momentum, this happens. These are the wrong questions, just like the wrong statements that I mentioned earlier. What you want to do instead is realize this first before we talk about what the optimal questions are. Realize that in life, what's so beautiful is you don't actually need to have the right answers in life. So if you were to imagine being a private investigator, you wouldn't want to be wasting your time with statements like, what a psychopath is, I can't believe you did this, or how could someone do such? Those questions and statements get you nowhere. And again, you don't need to have the right questions. All you need are the right answers. You don't need the right answers. All you need to have are the right questions. So the right questions in this example of a murder mystery would be, what's the killer's motive? Was there forced entry? Are there any videos? I want you to apply this too in your life, is that if we can just ask the right questions and forget about the answer, like Nikita was doing when she was asking you to observe your breath. She said, do it without judgment. So don't judge. Just say, look, let me just consider just right now what some of the ideal questions would be. And I want you to consider this in the business context of, if you want to throw a great party, you wouldn't have to have the right answer. All you need is, okay, how can I make this a night to remember? How can I make this unforgettable? How can I touch people's hearts? You just need that kind of questioning that will do the hunting for you, that will hunt down the answers for you. I want you to consider two questions right now. the first question, so when I coach people, mostly CEOs, on getting clear in their life, what I usually do is something called a congruency test. So I look at what they think is important, what their goals are, and I help them compare those to how they're actually living, functioning, performing, and then we get them congruent. So let's just assume right now you're super congruent, you know exactly what you want out of life. The first question I want you to ask is, if it's a business challenge, what is the purpose of my business? If it's just general life, you want to ask, what is my top or most essential priority in life? What's my top value? What's my mission? Just pick one of those questions to start with. So let's say you got it. Let's say you pick the most essential thing in my life right now is this. Now what you want to ask is not, is there an opportunity right now? You want to ask, what is the opportunity right now to fuel whatever is most important to me? Be careful not to think there are none, or opportunity will come sometime later in some sort of karma, if you will. Instead, I'd recommend that you consider what's happening right now. What are the opportunities that are presenting themselves right at this moment? You'll probably draw a blank initially, some of you. Some of you may have already done this, which is fantastic. But what you want to do is squeeze out as many opportunities as possible, because sometimes it's not the first one that you see. Sometimes it's a 25th one that's the light bulb moment that you can really seize and run with. So I would recommend, like a push-up, it's not a glamorous thing, but if you repeat it, the effect is glamorous. Repeating these questions is not glamorous, but again, if you keep doing so, it might just awaken a part of your mind that's possibly holding on to an idea, and you might be able to bring that to life. So I can give you some of the opportunities some of my coaching clients discovered. One was to redefine my core values for my business, to redefine my life mission statement, to reconsider my personal finances, my investments, my savings, my overheads. Some of these are business people, as you can see. To sharpen my leadership and communication skills, empower my sales skills, to strengthen my relationship with my family. So these are some of the opportunities that they were able to bring to the surface. You can see with Eddie, we were able to get him into a mindset of I can and I will, right? So he was breathing right, and he was also in that state of mind that I can and I will. And he clearly saw an opportunity, right? The opportunity to him was basically that I'll be able to stay here till it's dark. We'll be the last one to leave the pool. This memory with Eddie, this story, is still alive today as it was 4 years ago. He'll be 9 in September. We talk about it on the same time we reflexively. I'll jump to voice unless there's a question first. So BMV, body, mind, voice. Voice is about changing your language. I'm not talking about the sound you make, although when you are congruent, you resonate at a different level. But what I want to talk about now is about changing your language. I used to find myself on a regular basis saying that I'm bad with names. In fact, I'd forget someone's name and say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. And I'd find myself repeating that over and over again until a coach pulled me to the side and said, oh, do you realize you're a coach and you're still doing this? And I was like, man, that's such a great point. This is early on in my career. And I realized that just saying I'm bad with names makes me bad with names. It's like I'm watering the tree of being bad with names. I just help it grow stronger roots. Like the skyscraper example Nikita was talking about, if you can get your breath, your mind, and now your voice, which we'll talk about, working for you instead of against you, you lay that really strong foundation and you'll have less of that sway. And if you do sway, you recoil and rebound quickly. So here's what I want you to do with your voice. People may be asking you right now, like, how you doing? How's life? How's it going with what's going on right now? I would be very careful with how you respond, because you could be creating a self-fulfilling prophecy by saying things like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. This is nuts. I'm never going to be the same, that kind of thing. You want to actually structure your response of course, you want to find the opportunity first, because then it'll come out more authentically. You want to make sure that you're able to say stuff like, very interesting times. I'm able to appreciate opportunities that I wasn't able to appreciate before. Or, you know what, I've been able to capitalize on this. Or this has really freed up time for me to invest in this part of my life. That kind of thing. If you can communicate in this way, a very simple recommendation, you may not only it be empowering your life, but it may create a domino effect where the person you're speaking to may leave the call refreshed, and you may be getting them thinking like, wow, maybe I could be, communicating differently. Maybe I should be looking at it the way this person's looking at it. Some of my favorites are, surprisingly, I'm making the most of this. I'm connecting with my team. I realize there's so much to be grateful for. I'm okay. I'm discovering a new set of opportunities that didn't exist before. So that's it. Body, mind, voice. Very simple.
Just a question. A question from Ruchi Donna. She says, given that COVID-19 and with the lockdown, she's worried about the social development of her kid, because I guess in the usual climate or usual day-to-day life, everyone is, children used to meet playgrounds, schools, teachers, but now they're all cooped up, one mother, same environment. What would you suggest here?
Well, look, I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, you can only do what you can. I know if you're in some places in the world like Dubai, you can still go out and connect with people. I know in Abu Dhabi it's a little tighter. So I would recommend a couple of things. We started a reading initiative here at home. I write kids' books, and I can tell you right now, my kids are not fans at all. My son, my 8-year-old, thinks they're the worst books ever hit the planet. And I think he's right in a lot of respects. But, in the lockdown, he basically consumed all his reading material, and he stumbled across my book, and it was a book called Move Your Body. He said, "Hey, Dad, what's this about?" I said, "Son, it's real simple. It's about moving your body. It's about, there's no right way of exercising. If you like to run, run. If you like to skip, skip. If you like to swim, swim." And so he's been doing that. And so we started this reading initiative whereby kids can read to other kids around the world. Parents can read to kids around the world. Kids can read to parents. And we've created this network socially where we're reading, recording, and sharing with each other. So if you can't physically connect with other children, we had my sister's daughter's graduation online. It was an online Zoom surprise graduation party. She just graduated from University of Toronto, Queens, outside of Toronto. And, we just did the best we can. So I would recommend, if you can't physically connect, you got to appreciate the other forms and make sure you're tapping into the other forms online and just doing it that way. It's all you can really do. Unless you got a like-minded group of people. I do know some who are connecting. There's people at the mall today. When I went there was a few people having coffee. So you got to just kind of make the best of the situation you have and try to extract the opportunities that exist there.
So if anyone else has any questions for Odie, we can put it into the box now. We'll give that a minute.
Sure. And then I'll just go into a quick wrap up here, Nikita.
Yeah.
So basically, so far you've walked away, hopefully, this call with three ways at least, with your breathing, with your mindset, and obviously with the way you communicate, and obviously you're replacing your I can't and I tries with I can and I will. But I want to leave you with one last thing that's really helped me take this to another level. So I just want to let you guys know that when I was 21 years old in university, I completely hated it. And I felt like I was hoodwinked into getting into university, because when I was a teenager, I was on the boat with my sister. We just visited her friends. They live on a boat. They have a beautiful log cabin. The wind was blowing through my hair. I was sipping on a fruity drink. And I remember saying to my sister, I said, "Samra, how do you live like this?" And she was like, "Odie, there's two ways." She knew two ways. She knew where I was in my life. And she basically said, "You either go to university or sell drugs." And I was like, "Okay, what kind of drugs are we talking about here?" Just kidding. So I ended up going to university. But when I got there, I was like, man, this is just a fancy word for more school. And I had my final exams ahead of me. This was my second year. And I was like, all right, just my finals. And then I got the summer, and then I can regroup kind of thing. And I developed this cough. And then I remember sitting in an office looking down at the floor when the doctor said that this is a mild form of cancer. My sister was completely devastated. I couldn't even speak. And to say that I was depressed was an understatement. Her friend, who was a medical doctor as well, it was very awkward for her to watch her colleague's brother be diagnosed with cancer. But I want to just tell you that for the weeks and months that followed, I was very depressed, and I could barely crack a smile. And I still had my final exams to make matters worse. And the only thing that gave me a little bit of joy besides my family was Bob Marley music. I don't know why. I just started connecting with his music. And there was one particular song called Pass It On, and where there's a lyric that says, live for yourself, you live in vain, live for others, and you live again. And it got me thinking, you know, I thought, you know what, if I'm going to die, because see, I wasn't a library guy. I was a hockey player growing up in Canada. So, and I wouldn't be caught dead in the library. There's no internet back then. And my sister said it's a mild form of cancer, and I just took her word for it. But I had this premonition that this could be the end. And so basically, I thought, you know what, if I'm going to go, at least maybe I'm going to leave a gift for my family. I couldn't think of anything because all they wanted from me was to live. But then I thought, you know what, getting straight A's on my finals would do the trick. They would never believe it. Guys, to make a long story short, got the A's to their surprise and mine. And when I told them I got the A's, you know, my sister and my mom broke down crying. And I learned something so powerful. I learned that if you want to get an A in life, if you want to finish first, so to speak, and I'm not talking about beating anyone else, I'm talking your personal best. If you want to finish first as a personal best, put yourself second. And so that idea of finishing first by putting yourself second still rings true today for me, because I could never have gotten the A for me. Impossible. And God knows I tried. I used to always say I couldn't get an A if my life depended on it. And it was interesting that when my life did depend on it, it wasn't that my life depended on it that I got the A. It was that I was thinking about my family. So I think that this is the next level up in terms of bringing out your resilience, is doing things, and I know many of you already are, but dedicating things for other people. I dedicate almost every day to somebody ever since I was 21 years old, and almost every speech to somebody. And so I want to just leave you with that message that if you can empower your body, mind, and voice, and put yourself second, I think you'll turn this into an opportunity and really seize it. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here today, guys. If you have any questions, we'd love to handle them now.